Championships coming up this weekend. WPIL and District 10 titles, some already in the books, some to be decided this weekend. It's Final Four Friday in the WPIL and Championship Saturday in WPIL and District 10 territory for the coming weekend. As we go beyond the scoreboard, taking a look at what we got going on, and there's plenty going on in the world of high school football. Can't believe we're getting down to the nitty-gritty. We are officially, Eric Thomas, into the start of the state tournament officially this weekend. You're down to the Sweet 16 and all the classifications across the state.
Yeah, really, and still some district work to be done in a couple of areas, but there are some teams that enter the state tournament now, and we'll see how it all shakes out. There's a lot of interesting things that have yet to be decided in the WPIL that'll sort themselves out over the next couple of days and into next week. But other than that, it's going to be quick. It's going to be all of a sudden state championships are going to be here, and before you know it, we're going to be on to basketball season. It goes by fast.
Yeah, there's already run into a couple of coaches this week, actually, in basketball season. They're getting ready. Their official practices begin on Friday, actually. So you still got a couple of teams in the county still on the gridiron that will miss the first official day of hoops practice. That's just how, these elongated seasons go. Do want to give a shout out to all the teams across the state that are be competing for state championships this weekend. Boys and girls soccer, field hockey, and girls volleyball all will be crowning champions either on Friday or Saturday. The soccer games have been moved to Northeastern High School. The volleyball and field hockey championships still being held at Cumberland Valley. And that's the final goal for all of these teams for state title gold on the gridiron here as well. We'll take a look at the games coming up again. Final Four Friday in the WPIL and the couple of championship games on Saturday in Class 4A and 6A in the WPIL. We'll also take a look at the Class 1A District 10 title game featuring our Wilmington Greyhounds in the county doing battle in that one. We'll break down all those games, but first let's take a quick look back, Eric, at the week that was the quarterfinals for most of the WPIL, but semifinals for a couple of classifications, including Class 4A. The Parkway round robin essentially goes in favor of the Aliquippa Quips. They got healthy at the right time. They're playing their best ball at the right time. They control the line of scrimmage in getting a convincing win. I know 14-0 doesn't sound convincing, but they controlled the game there against Newcastle. They got the win when it matters most. And hey, surprise, surprise, what is it, 16th time in the last 17 years and 17 in the last 18 years, Aliquippa playing for a WPIL championship.
Yeah, really, and I mean, just to be kind of blunt about it, a disappointing night if you're a Quips fan or a Newcastle fan. The Quips, James, it's not the same as what they did a couple of years ago when they were playing the McDevitt's of the world and when they beat Dallas for the state championship. I think that there's a lot of limitations with Marcus Counsell, and I don't mean athletically. I just mean his health right now, but he still gives them the best option, a quarterback that they have. I don't think they want to go back to A, not having him, and then B, take Khalil Good away from another weapon. And if you're going to run the ball anyway and he's able to play, you might as well just put him on the field and let him do what he did Friday night, which is attempt 8 passes. I actually think he might have gotten credit for one more or two more than he actually threw, but they just line up in their power football, and they ran for 200 plus yards against the Newcastle defense that was really, really good for the duration of the year. But man, they ran into some problems the last 3 weeks stopping the run. Almost 200 against Blackhawk, and then almost 200 against Montour in a game they survived, and then over 200 last week. Teams kind of figured them out. Aliquippa's offensive line's physical. Their run game is fantastic with Cleister, Longmire, and J.J. Work, and all the guys that they put back there, Akiva Woods, those dudes. They have everything you want in a running game. Their offense is a little bit limited, but if they can line up and be physical like that, they're going to go far and probably play for a state title. I don't know if they get by McKeesport, but man, their team it impressed me more so with not the flash and flare and the big play and all that they have had in the last 4 or 5 years, but just how physical they were up front. They controlled the line of scrimmage. They controlled the tempo. They controlled the start. of that game, the finish of that game. I know both points came like in the second half, both touchdowns in the second half, but it just never felt like Newcastle could get its footing against them at all, even in the first half.
And I'll tell you what I think something that's going to be overlooked overall for this game in particular, but for all high school football games, how important every position on the field really truly is. Because Newcastle had a terrible injury to one of their not an every down player, a role player, does a lot of little things for him though. And Quaylon Davis, one of the things he is the long snapper. He left the game against Montour. They didn't attempt a long snap, I don't think, the rest of the game. Maybe the punt at the very end of the game. I think it was the only time they even attempted to throw a long snap in there. They went for two twice because they didn't trust the long snap to get back well enough, and it definitely played a factor in setting up a short field late for the game winner, or for the game clincher, I should say, late for Aliquippa. So a lot of things didn't go right for Newcastle, but special teams was rough, and I think a lot of it starts with right there. A guy who doesn't get a lot of notoriety is the long snapper, and I think his absence certainly played a big role, but just again because of continuity and a position that is so important that you have people playing in the NFL getting contracts literally just to snap their football. Don't say it's not an important position. That's a case in point right there of how crucial his role was and wasn't able to be taken care of on Friday night.
And the sad part about it was, had they made it to Saturday's WPIL title game, he probably was going to play too. I don't know how effective he would have been, and I don't know if he would have been able to long snap in that game, but they would have had him out there as a defensive end. Tight end, probably not. He would have been a one-way player. So it all, and one of the coaches had told me before the game, they said if this was any other sport, he probably has to get Tommy John surgery. But I took that kind of as twofold. One, maybe it's good for a basketball season because they're certainly going to need him on the hardwood at Newcastle. But two, had they won that game, and it was still, even though it never felt like, Newcastle was going to kind of mount a comeback, and it sort of seemed like the life was really sucked out of that team when Warwick scored the first touchdown of the game. But everything was kind of lining up for them that had they won that game, that they were going to be full health back. And I just, teams sometimes have to figure out how to win other than just put enough points on the board. And what I mean by that is when you're young, you have to figure out, we talked last week about how there's so many layers to games. And I just don't know that Newcastle team, even though they had a bunch of underclassmen, some of their key players are sophomores, freshmen, obviously. They got a long way to go yet. I mean, those guys have to go through something like this to understand what it takes to be a championship team. And I think that where I sort of played up that whole idea that because a lot of these guys were on the basketball team last year and it ended sour for them, they were going to come back during football season and make sure that that crop of talent got a title. Well, now it translates over to basketball. Now they know what it's like to lose in a game that they felt they should have won and play for a title they felt they should have played for. And maybe it carries over to basketball, but as a football core, you got to go through this stuff and you got to have your rough games. And Marino Graham wasn't going to play perfect forever. Their run game could just never get on track. It seemed like, unless it was him carrying the football. And James, the penalties on Friday were just so bad for Newcastle. They had 15 penalties in that game.
Yeah.
You can't do that. You can't do that week 0. But you certainly can't do that come postseason play, because everything is magnified, where if you make one mistake in a penalty, if it's a personal foul, even if it's an offsides or a false start, if that costs you 5 yards and you go from 3rd and 1 to 3rd and 6, and then you don't convert and you got to punt, you lose the game, that penalty cost you on that drive. So you can't do it 15 times for sure. And that's the other thing about this Aliquippa team that I was really surprised about. They were the more disciplined team between the two. When they took the field in warmups, they weren't chirping. That team a couple of years ago that played Dallas for the state title, and I love every one of those players that was on that team, but guys like Cam Lindsay and stuff, they were talking so much trash before that game, and they knew they were going to win it, and they backed it up. But those guys love to jaw with you and kind of win the game before they even got on the field. This team was like all business. They came out there and they were just like, we're going to go through our warm-ups. We'll check you out. We'll look over your way, but we're not going to say anything. There's a lot of respect there, but we're coming here to beat you, and that's exactly what they did. And this team just has a different a different approach to things, and I think that makes them for sure. They're an underdog on Saturday, but that for sure makes them a live underdog against McKeesport.
Yeah, for sure. We'll talk about that game here in a moment. I do want to mention, because you talked about the penalties, that's a really good point. There's going to be penalties that are self-inflicted. It's going to happen, but it's also about, being able to move to the next play. And the one penalty in that third quarter looked like it may have been a blocked punt. I think one of the officials on the field actually did signal a block and then was in conversation with the other officials. One of the other officials had a better view and said, no, there was no deflection. So the penalty, the roughing the punter, extends the Aliquippa drive. Very next play, you got to be able to shake it off, and they were unable to do so. It's the next play that Work goes for the long touchdown that ends up being the game winner. So sometimes calls don't go your way, plays don't go your way. A young team, especially, you got to be able to shake that sort of thing off. And unfortunately, Newcastle unable to do it in that one. And then same thing, you have the errant punt snap, you lead to a fumble deep in your own territory. You got to try to come up and make a big defensive stand. They did it a couple times early in the third quarter. Were able to make a goal line stand. Weren't able to do so down the stretch. And really, that's the long and short of it. Aliquippa was able to play like they had been there before. And yeah, they've been there 19 straight times to the semifinals. So not too surprising that they were able to weather the storm down the stretch and make it happen. So hats off to Coach Warfield and company. They found a way. Now they're going to have to find another way. Can they stop the McKeesport running game like they stopped and stymied the Newcastle running game from a week ago? If Keemon Spell's healthy, I don't think that's possible, Eric. But we've certainly been wrong here before.
Yeah, I really don't know which way to lean in that game. I mean, I would say that McKeesport's probably the favorite in that game.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about it's by more than maybe 3 or 6 points. I at the most, but I just there's something about this Quippa team now that and seeing them up close and kind of expecting less from them, but then getting more than what I bargained for on Friday night. I would not at all be surprised if they won that title. And
Yeah,
if
we
they
all know better
do,
than the bet against the Quips, don't we?
yeah,
We know better than the bet against them.
and nobody does us against the world better than Aliquippa. I mean, we all understand that. And James, if they win that, okay, their path to get to Cumberland Valley is going to be either Oil City or Punxsutawney. And I'm sorry, neither one of those teams are going to stand a chance against the physical Aliquippa team on a neutral field. And then in a potential semi, you're looking at the District 3 champ, which could be Susquehanna Township, #1 seed, very talented, good offense. Moves the football, very, very athletic team. That might be Joe Heaton's most athletic team in a long time. Fundamentally gifted and sound Wyomissing, West York, or Twin Valley. Susquehanna Township might be able to hang with them, and Wyomissing might be able to grind them out and sort of control the clock against them. But none of those teams are going to be favored if Aliquippa gets through Saturday. No question. And you look at the other side, Southern Lehigh, maybe. I mean, they've been there, 2 years in a row now. Kind of knocking on the door of this thing. Bethlehem Catholic, maybe. Shamokin's had a historic year. None of those teams are going to. Now, whoever comes out of the East has less of a chance against McKeesport, I think. But so they have a better chance against Aliquippa, and that's again because of some limitations. But I can't right now. I can't bet against them. They're too physically minded, and it's just that they've kind of adopted this like different approach to the game, and they're like, fine, if we need to run the ball 45 times, we're going to run the ball 45 times. We may not have the playmakers or the offense now, but we're just going to kind of go old school and power eye it, and we're just going to try to grind you out.
Yeah, it felt more like a Darrell Rivas or Ty Law led team back of the 90s, early 2000s of the power eye and Maryland eye formation there down the stretch. But Coach Warfield knew they had an advantage up front, took advantage of it. It will be fun. That's a noon kickoff at Pine Richland High School for the Saturday championship game in Class 4A. I don't think they're going to be able to run it that effectively. Not nearly to that level against McKeesport, but the way both teams are running the football right now, that could be a game that could be over maybe within an hour and a half of real time, because it's going to be ground pound, and I could see it being a 13-10 type scoring game, or 16-14 type scenario. Wouldn't surprise me whatsoever. Let's talk real quick the other game that's at 6 o'clock on Saturday night, the WPIL 6A championship. No surprise, I don't think it's Central Catholic against North Allegheny. NA had to survive another tight game against Norwood. Hats off to a great season for the Knights. Any chance that North Allegheny can do the improbable yet again? How many times have they lost in the regular season, come back and somehow gotten the win against Central in the championship? Can it happen again in 2025?
No, I think it's going to take a Herculean effort in order for it to happen. That team that did it a couple years ago, when they had that explosive second half and kind of ran away with that thing, that was a different animal. And that
Yeah.
I just don't see that style of team in NA right now. It's no disrespect to what Art Walker does there, because I think he's the best coach in the WPIL next to Warfield, but it's no, no, and it's going to once again set up probably a rematch with State College, and then probably a rematch with Harrisburg. Although Harrisburg's got a really tricky district semifinal on Saturday against Manheim Township, a really gifted Manheim Township team, kind of overachieving for Mark Evans' crew this year. But I don't see it. It's going to be wash, rinse, and repeat. And we're getting the rematch with LaSalle, Central Catholic, and LaSalle for the 6A title. I don't think there's any question.
Yeah, that's a 6:00 kickoff for the Class 6A championship on Saturday. The rest are semifinal games on Friday, so your Final Four Friday, so to speak. We'll talk about our Class 2A and 1A teams here first, and we'll dive a little bit into the 3A and 5A classifications here. But in Class 2A, not quite chalk. Washington, a dominating victory over South Allegheny. My, how the Gladiators fell hard in the last 3 weeks of their season. Seton LaSalle, I'll say this right now, 42-7 over Mohawk. I mean, that game was done at halftime. I watched a few games of film on Seton LaSalle, and watching them, the running back to me was okay. The offensive line looked solid. The defense did their job, but for the most part, I didn't see anything that was like over the top impressive. Seton LaSalle was all that in a bag of chips. Like, you wondered a week off how the rust might play into effect, having that first round bye. They certainly proved me wrong. Their rust was a 10-play drive that ended in a turnover on downs near the red zone. I think they scored every other possession the rest of the first half. And Kai Jones was literally perfect, 8 for 8 for $150, a couple of touchdowns. The running back absolutely lights out. The Seton LaSalle team, they went from a team that I thought could easily have been upset in that 1-8 game to a team I'm sure as heck not betting against.
No, and they also, 35 points in the second quarter. It's hard to do. I mean, it really is. Like, especially in a playoff game, you're expecting to get the best out of everybody. And that's not to suggest that Mohawk didn't give them their best, but Seton LaSalle is just on a different plane right now. And it surprises me that they're as good as they are, and they've kind of had to switch their philosophy this year, more defensive oriented. Again, their defense was really good last year when we saw them in the semis against Steel Valley, but I expected a little bit more out of Mohawk in this game. Not surprised they lost. Just not that I didn't expect 42 points in the first half. I thought that might be a little bit closer in the first half, and then you look at it and either one team pulls away or it stays tight the rest of the way, and no chance. That defense is just too good right now. And they get it going with an 85-yard pass too. Like, talk about breaking your back right away. That's when you already know you're up against it, and then they go 85 to score the first touchdown of the game. That's asking a lot to come back from.
Eric, even worse than that, about 3 plays before that, Mohawk, they about had a 70-yard touchdown pass. Literally the exact same style of play, a wheel route to Joey Nail, and the ball was overthrown just by an inch. Like, it literally went off the fingernails of Joey Nail. The wind was swirling, and at that point was at Fadden's back. If that play was one play before the wind kind of shifted and was blowing even harder, it's a touchdown and Mohawks up 7-0. They get a 70-yard punt, pinned them deep, but then same thing the other way, and just the wind held it up enough that the receiver was able to make the fingertip catch. It was a game of inches. There was a Fadden fumble that looked like the knee might have been down. It was bang, bang, a play of inches. 2 turnovers late in the first half in the red zone, leading to short fields. Yeah, 5 touchdowns in the second quarter, 4 of them in the last 4 minutes of the second quarter, Eric. So it compounded very quickly. And Seton LaSalle, you can't give them an inch because they take it a mile, or they'll take it at least 100 yards into the end zone like they did in the game against Mohawk. So Seton LaSalle will take on Washington. They did battle just a couple of weeks ago. Seton LaSalle won that Century Conference game. I think it was a 2-touchdown win for them there. On the other side, Western Beaver puts up a good number of points. 41-13. Wyatt Sparbaney is back. He was feared he was going to be out for the rest of the year. He's back in action. And Steel Valley, they took care of business against Elwood City. A mediocre 5-touchdown day for Deron Barksdale doing what he does best. You're going to see a lot of running the football for all four of these teams. That's what they do best. That's what they like doing. And when it comes down to it, you're going to need a team that can find a way to switch it up and go to the aerial attack as necessary, which is why I think Seton LaSalle is the team out of all of them that has the most diversity with Kai Jones and company. I think that's why they're my favorite the rest of the way. But you're going to see, again, like we talked about in the 4A championship game, you're going to see two ground-heavy games here between the Rebels and the Prexies, and on the other side, the Ironmen and the Golden Beavers.
Yeah, and I still think Steel Valley probably and Seton LaSalle are going to meet once again in this tournament. And we said we talked for so long about this year about how 2A was going to be winnable by just about anybody. No, there's Western Beaver probably is a third choice maybe out of the four that are left, but I see this coming down to Seton LaSalle and Steel Valley. They'll duke it out, and I probably favor Seton LaSalle a little bit in that matchup. I know that Steel Valley is great, and Barksdale's been killing people on the ground, but I sense that against a defense like Seton LaSalle, when you're too one-dimensional like that, and you really can't mix it up as much as you need to, you have to throw something different at them. They're going to expect that type of run, and I'm not 100% sold on any other defense that's left in this bracket except Seton LaSalle's. That's a big difference.
Those semifinal games, all of them in the WPIL coming up on Friday night. Let's take a look down at Class 1A and see what we have in store for that. And with the Class 1A brackets here, Eric, I think the obvious thing is that you have 1, 2, 3, 4. The only classification other than 6A, that one really doesn't count. Only 4 teams made it. But for 1A through 5A, this is the only bracket that the committee got the top 4 teams going chalk all the way to the finals. And that's kind of interesting too, because 1, 2, 3, 4 all made the finals. 5, 6, 7, 8 all lost in the first round. So an interesting way that it all kind of played out here in the 1A tournament. Fort Cherry over Neshannock 36-9. Let's talk about that game first. Matt Sig, really kind of pedestrian numbers. I mean, I say that partially tongue-in-cheek. He was still over 100 yards, still had a couple of touchdowns. It was the running backs who did more of the damage on the ground. Overall, nearly 400 rushing yards in the game. Only, I think, 2 pass attempts in the game for Fort Cherry. One of them was an interception return for a touchdown. It was called back on a penalty, but they don't need to throw the ball. There was a slight threat of pass, but in the end, they didn't need to. The Rangers are what they are. They have one of the best running games that you've ever seen, really, in WPIL football history. They've always had a great running game, and it just showed here yet again today, or on Friday night.
Yeah, it really did. And, they don't do anything really to wow you. They just line up. They're physical. They had a kickoff return, you mentioned to start the game called back. So, I mean, we know that they have the speed. Sig's been fantastic in this kind of one-dimensional approach. I think the big story out of that game was that he actually attempted a pass. He hasn't thrown much because of his shoulder injury. This team, though, I start to sometimes wonder a little bit about the competition level. I know 1A has been as deep as it's ever been, but I start to sometimes wonder about the competition level. And then last week I see, Jeanette almost knocking off Clareton, and I think to myself, okay, well, there's a team that was a 10 seed and was kind of flat all year, and they went toe-to-toe with one of the best defenses that pitched 9 shutouts this year. So,
and put up 33 points there, Eric. Keep that in mind.
Exactly.
It's not that that's close.
Yeah,
wow.
That's the thing. Like, not even stuck with them, but I mean, lost the game by 5 and scored 33 points. Like, that's insane. But so we'll see. I mean, Friday night is definitely the best defense that Fort Cherry has played all year long, and potentially, if they get through Laurel and they get through Clareton to win the WPIL title, that's about as good of a run as you can make, because I don't think enough people have paid attention to how good. In fact, I know not enough people have paid attention to how good Laurel's defense is. They're stuck in Lawrence County. Nobody gets up there, and people can read numbers and transcribe things and all that. But unless you see that team play and see how physical they are and what they've done against teams like Neshannock and what they've done against teams like Southside Beaver and, how they took apart a Mohawk team that everybody was saying was a live underdog to get to a final and all that. I don't think people appreciate how good that Laurel defense is. And if Fort Cherry's able to do the same thing to them on Friday night, I think this game's going to be a lot closer than people think it is. Um, there's been some numbers floating around. There's a gentleman who's on one of the forums on social media, Michael Gallus, who he does a prediction method, and he actually thinks this is going to be his prediction method or model says it's like a 4-point game. I think people need to be ready for that because Laurel's defense is that good. The question mark becomes in this game, can they do anything against Fort Cherry's defense? And again, unless you've paid attention to Laurel, and a lot of people have not, you don't know about Colton Carlson and what he's done. Sig has been fantastic, and he's one of the WPL's all-time greats. Laurel's got some of their own greats, too, that have been pretty good and have put up a lot of good numbers and have explosive plays to their credit. And I hope that this game on Friday night is as good as I think it can be, because even if Laurel loses at that point, it still shows that what they've put together and how far they've come as a unit and the groundwork they've laid and how good their team could be going forward. And what some of the younger players are going to be. I mean, their offensive line on their JV team or junior high team is great. It's going to be another great one. They have a blueprint, a foundation laid, and this is kind of their moment here to show people and shock the world. Again, don't know if they're going to do it. It's easy to expect that they won't if you don't know a whole lot about them, but I think they're going to surprise some people on Friday night and keep this thing close. It's a style of defense that Fort Cherry probably doesn't want to face, and they're gonna get it full bore on Friday night.
We'll get a full preview here in a moment. Talk about Laurel though on last Friday night, defeating Chartiers Houston 40-21. The final. It was basically done at a 40-13 score. Actually, done before that. A couple of back and forth scores late to make the game look a little bit closer, but that defense early on, forced a couple turnovers late in the first half. Put the clamps on. It was 14-0 at the halftime break, and Laurel's offense exploded early. 3 sacks in the game for Tyler Fuchs. Medved in the backfield a bunch of times. Mahoney getting the job done. They did a great job of containing one of the better dual threat quarterbacks that you'll see in Walsh there for Chartiers Houston. He finishes as a 1,000 player to end his season here, but it was kind of the same thing when Jefferson Morgan came out. Like, oh, this is a big line. They are bigger than Laurel's line. Laurel handed it to him. Chartiers Houston on average about 40 pounds heavier man for man than Laurel. And Laurel took it to that offensive and defensive line for 2 straight weeks. You got another big challenge against a Fort Cherry team coming up. But we'll talk real quick just about what they've done so far here in the playoffs. Laurel in the trenches on both offense and defense.
So this team is still not allowing 80 yards rushing a game. That's going to change a little bit Friday because Fort Cherry is definitely going to get theirs. They're allowing less than 85 passing a game. Well, that doesn't matter on Friday because Fort Cherry is not going to throw the ball much. They're allowing just over 155 yards of total offense. They have 20 picks this year. Of the 92 tackles for loss, the defensive line has 52. Of the 28 sacks, guess how many the defense had, the defensive line? 22 of them.
Wow.
22 sacks from the defensive line. They are just controlling everybody up front, and they've been doing this for weeks now. And, you have a guy like Tyler Fuchs who commands a lot of attention. You have an absolute monster in the middle in Kevin Mahoney and Casey Wilson. And Casey Wilson's had one of the best seasons I've ever seen from a defensive tackle at the high school level. I got to go back to my alma mater in 2011 when we won the state title to find guys that have played that well along the defensive line that I've seen in a given season. A Lincoln Hope for sure is up there too from North Allegheny because I've seen him wreck a game too. But I haven't seen 2 guys like Mahoney and Wilson wreck a game like they can in the middle. Oh, and then by the way, Alex Medved has 9 sacks and 19 tackles for loss this season too. Like he is an all-conference player. He's borderline all-state, if you ask me. I'm certainly going to give him a nod or a nomination when we do all that coming up here. And by the way, this team is plus 19 in turnover margin. When the hell has a team ever been plus 19 in turnover margin at this level? I mean, that is absurd how good they've been and how efficient this team has been. And that's what I'm saying. People are not giving them enough credit. And this game has potential to be a grind out game. I mean, Laurel ran for almost 300 yards on Friday, so I don't know what they're going to expect Lucas Santini to do, but that's why he's been so good this year because they can pound the football. They're averaging over 200 yards rushing a game. Game potentially Friday comes down to run game and defense, and it's going to be who blinks first in this one.
That will be a fun one on Friday night. Eric and I will have the call with video on NFHS Network and audio on LC SportsNet. As always, free audio to be able to listen to for that game. We'll get some funny tidbits of that one here coming up later in the show. Taking a look at the full state bracket, we'll talk about the Wilmington Greyhounds as well. They just took care of business in convincing fashion, 42-7, the final in that game over Cambridge Springs on Saturday. They're playing in their championship game coming up on this Saturday against Greenville, another Hounds versus Trojans rematch. We'll get that full breakdown just real quick before we talk about the state bracket as a whole. Just a quick moment to talk about the Hounds and again doing what they need to do to take care of business last Saturday night.
Yeah, that was a pretty quick game. They started out a little sloppy in the first quarter, sort of a feeling out process. Cambridge Springs was down their best running back, Brett Kanya, and they couldn't figure out their offense. And that team to take that piece away and then kind of become a one-man show and try to figure it out with your quarterback. You can't be trying to piece that together against a team like Wilmington. They're too talented. I said it on Saturday night when we were doing the game with Chris Birch and our friends over at 96.7, that team just reminds me so much of the first ever Southern Columbia team I covered, where they're so good on defense, but their offense, they run the ball. They have so many weapons they can turn it over to. They really take you outside your comfort level, and they're well coached. Brandon Fillion does a fantastic job with that team, and he coaches the team that he has. He doesn't coach the team that he wants it to be. He knows what he has, and he taps into that and gets the most out of those guys. And to finally sit down and see that in person and get a feel for them instead of watching them from afar this season, I was really, really impressed with that team. I really was. I again go back to something I said, I think it was last week or maybe the week before, though. Fort Cherry has to win a state title to kind of crown everything Matt Sig and that crew has done. Like, there's no alternative for them in this tournament. They must win a state title to give him his moment. Wilmington and everybody else that's still out there in single A, it's like house money. There's no pressure on them. They're not the favorite. They're not going to be the favorite every time they play them. They might be the favorite in their game that they play that given weekend. But, if Wilmington gets matched up against Port Allegheny, last year's state runner-up, then who knows how they feel in that game. But pressure would be on Port Allegheny in that game. To try to get back to a state final, to try to match up with Fort Cherry, to try to prove that they were the dominant team last year because they knocked them out. There's a lot to be said for the teams that are not the favorite, not the heavy favorite like a Fort Cherry, and going forward, and how that plays a big role in some of these games. Wilmington is going to crush Greenville this weekend. I'm saying all apologies to Greenville. Wilmington is winning that single A District 10 title, no question.
Real quick on the other side of the eastern side of the 1A bracket, what are we seeing out there? Obviously, Guilfoyle and Westinghouse are the two teams that stick out in your mind. Could potentially get another quarterfinal rematch.
Yeah, I'm a little curious about this Westinghouse team because, man, they really struggled towards the end of the season. They got a bye last week, and they get Myersdale on Friday night. Guilfoyle, Westinghouse in a potential quarter. I guess Guilfoyle team still has enough left in the tank from last year that I think they can probably get through that and get to a semifinal again. And down at the bottom of the bracket, Belmont Charter, York Catholic. That Belmont Charter team's been good all year. They've been state ranked all year. York Catholic was the number 1 seed in District 3. They beat their rival for the district title, DeLone Catholic. And then keep an eye on Line Mountain, because Line Mountain's played really well out of District 4 this year. They smacked Montgomery for that title last week. And then Lackawanna Trail beat, I thought, a really good Tri-Valley team to get to the quarters opposite of Line Mountain. So that's a really good quarterfinal on or state, I guess state first round it would be on Friday night, Lime Mountain and Lackawanna Trail. Winner of that game probably gets to the semi opposite of either Guilfoyle or Westinghouse. I'd probably favor Guilfoyle right now to get to the state final.
And they would be looking to repeat then, are the Marauders trying to make a repeat there in Class 1A. Want to talk about 3A and 5A here in a moment, but I do want to give a shout out to some of the teams and the players that we lost. I mean, after a historic opening round of the playoffs, 6 teams in the playoffs, 5 playing, all 5 victorious, only 2 still surviving here to make it into the 3rd week of the postseason. But some very special numbers that we need to give credit to. First, for Elwood City, Tyler Smiley sets the single season passing yards record, 1,824, the top passer in Lawrence County this year. Not bad for a first-year starter. Literally had not attempted a pass. His brother kind of had something to do with that. I will take it back. He did attempt one pass. It was incomplete. Had not completed a pass before his senior year. But big shout out to him. 2 receivers, Dom Hogue, Daylon Curry. They're now 1 and 2 all time in receptions. Hogue, I think, is 2 in receiving yards, and Curry number 2 in touchdowns. And they've set or are in the top 2 in just about every single receiving category now in their careers. Again, that's an Elwood City team. I said it from the beginning. I was not expecting this from them to be able to come out after all, 18 seniors from last year that they lost. Did not see this season coming. So big hats off to Coach Dan Bradley. I should know better than to bet against a Coach Bradley team for sure. Mohawk, I know it was an up and down year. You wonder what if, obviously if you don't have an injury to, a big part of your offense early on, if you can squeak out 1 or 2 of those wins that in the midseason that you lost in the last couple of minutes. But hey, that's football. They bounced back. They made it into the playoffs. And you got to say goodbye to Bobby Fadden, one of the greatest in WPL history when you look at the numbers. Only the 2nd ever to have 1,000 yards passing, rushing, and receiving in a career. He finishes his career, get this, 3,200 plus passing yards with 35 touchdowns, ran for over 1,200 yards and 17 touchdowns, and then had 1,400 receiving yards and 24 touchdowns as well. So doing it all. And how fitting is it, Eric, that he did it all in that final game? He threw passes, he ran passes, and he even caught a pass because he had a pass deflected back into his face that he caught for a 4-yard loss. That's his first first reception, I should say, since his sophomore year. But very fitting, I think, that he was able to do all 3 in the final game of his career. We'll see plenty of him on the gridiron, but I thought that was a very fitting the loss not fitting, but just getting all 3 statistical categories very fitting for him in the last game of his career. And real quick for Neshannock, want to mention obviously Gino Mazzocco, a total of 75 total touchdowns, over 3,500 passing yards in his career to go along with just shy of 2,000 yards on the ground. 37 touchdowns, both passing and rushing. So 74 offensive touchdowns in his career. Insane numbers for him. Anthony Aiken just shy of 1,000 yards rushing on the year. Those 2 have been stalwarts for the last 3 years in that Lancer backfield. They will surely be missed. And of course, for Newcastle, a lot of the guys in the trenches, like Jaden Schaefer, deserve a lot of recognition. Chase Lemon is a player down the stretch, just kept doing more and more and more for this team. Finishes with just over 1,000 receiving yards in his career and 15 touchdowns as well. So just want to give a big shout out to all these great guys here in Lawrence County that unfortunately we've seen the last game of their high school career, but we'll see a lot of them on the gridiron or on the baseball diamond as well, Eric. It's been fun to watch all these guys, and we wish them best of luck later in their scholastic year this season and into whatever future endeavors they have.
Yeah, and don't forget that Fadden, to take him away from what he was so good at, think about how good that offense could have been if they would have had a different quarterback who could throw the football with him, Joey Nail, and Blake Logan. I mean, that would have been an absolutely incredible offense. They could have really put Fadden anywhere they wanted to. He could have been their star running back if they needed him to be. But for him to want to take on that role of replacing Jay Rona, not an easy thing to do in that Mohawk offense, and he accepted the challenge. He's their best athlete. And we only get so many more days with him as an athlete. Basketball season is going to be a lot of fun, I think, for that Mohawk team. That Mohawk team should be pretty good this year, I think, anyway, especially with a
Mhm.
lot of the depth I got coming back. But honor to watch those guys, and we get to see them do it another. The beautiful thing about these schools in Lawrence County is all these guys are going to play three sports against each other.
Yeah.
Laurel's going to duke it out with Mohawk again, and Santini and Fad and all those guys, Elwood City, Smiley, all those dudes. They're all going to just duke it out over three sports, and it's truly it's been a pleasure to sit back and watch those guys.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Joey Nail as well because I want to mention him just shy of 1,000 receiving yards in his career when all is said and done as well. And yeah, Fadden moving the quarterback allows Blake Logan to break his single season receiving record. And I think Joey Nail, if he had one more year, I think he would have been knocking on the doorstep of season long and career reception totals there as well. Just impressive stuff all around. And again, hats off to everybody involved with those teams, with what they've done here in their careers. And we'll look forward to seeing them on the hardware. Hopefully they're getting a couple of days of rest before they get perfectly and fully, I should say, into the hoops season. All right, wanted to talk about Class 3A here real quick, and 5A briefly as well, but just some general things that you've seen, Eric, in the 3A and 5A bracket, both in the WPIL and across the state.
Yeah, three. I mean, Avonworth seems like they're the favorite to win this thing in the WPIL, and I'd throw a dart. Really, I think either Hickory or Sharon probably gets through the next game, and then takes on the WPIL champ in the semifinal. That could get really interesting. Newman Goretti got a bye in the District 12 area, so they're all the way to the state quarters, and they will either get Berks Catholic or Trinity. That Trinity team's a little weird. That program's been up and down. I mean, Jordan Hill was there, and there was some. That school potentially was about to explode with funding, new stadium, Jordan Hill. They had like all these different things going on for it. Messiah Mickens was one of the top prospects in the state, if not the country. And then it's like it all just kind of fell apart. But they've been able to piece this thing together, and their defense is really solid. So that's a good district championship matchup with Berks Catholic. Mifflinburg Scranton Prep, interesting game. Prep's been really, really good all year long. And Prep actually, for those that follow the eastern side of the state, Berwick's legendary program finally got back on the map this year with George Curry's grandson CJ, and they get all the
Mm-hmm.
way to a District 4 championship, and they are District 2 championship, and they get knocked out by Scranton Prep, a Scranton Prep team that's played really well. Now they get Mifflinburg in this state opening round. That's going to be a tough one for them. And then Northwestern Lehigh, who's been in the state title game 2 years in a row, they get Notre Dame Green Pond for the District 11 championship, and then it's on to the state quarters. That team's probably looking like the one that's going to get there again, and that's been a little surprising. That would be a heck of a matchup with them and Scranton Prep in the quarters if they get there, and then potentially a Newman Goretti in the state semis. 3A is going to end up being pretty good. I think we're headed towards Avonworth Northwestern Lehigh too, though. That was that was an absolutely incredible final last year, and I think we're gonna see those two get at it again this year.
Yeah, sign me up if that is to happen. Also, sign me up for that District 10 championship, Hickory and Sharon. Actually, you can go and watch the one with Sports Radio 96.7 here on Friday night. That's going to be a big one for the District 10 title, and would not surprise me if you see likely Avonworth, like you said, coming out of District 7, taking on either Hickory or Sharon in that Western final in Class 3A. Real quick tidbits on Class 5A. I still think it might be South Fayette's here to lose.
5A,
or Pine Richland, excuse me. Why did I say South Fayette? My fault.
You look at 5, and the semis for WPIL are insane. I mean, Peters and Upper St. Clair, that's a state championship game right there, if you ask me. Whoever survives that, and then you get to go play possibly Pine Richland. Don't be surprised if Moon pulls an upset too, but I just think Pine Richland has too much talent. And they probably are going to play. I'm going to probably say Upper St. Clair for the title next week. Down in the bottom half, this is another one where the WPIL gets the District 3 champ. And this McDevitt team, are they as good as last year? Absolutely not. They've had to replace a lot of pieces. They lost early to Harrisburg. They lost their 2 early games this season. Just got dominated by the Canadian team in week 0, and then Harrisburg kind of pulled them apart in a close game that was close, and then they just pulled away at the end. More of a running style team. Offensive line might be a little undersized. They do still have some playmakers that can catch the ball. Quarterback was a work in progress with Sebastian Williams. They've kind of figured that spot out. If they get Exeter, they do get Exeter in the district semis. They probably get to the final. They're going to win. They are winning District 3. I mean, nobody has as much talent as them. This will be their toughest game against Exeter. A really fundamentally sound Exeter team, good offensive line. But, yeah, probably, I mean, WPIL champ, if it's Upper St. Clair, any of the 4 that are left against McDevitt, it's going to be a fantastic semi. And then other side of the bracket, Hollidaysburg's been kind of on this 2-year run, and they just got by DuBois last week by a point. Roman Catholic and Whitehall. Roman Catholic still has a ton of firepower. Rick Preet's got the thing humming again. They probably get out of the East, I think. I don't know. Chester has had a great year in District 1, and they got a ton of talent. They really thought they were going to be in this position last year where they can make a state final run. Wouldn't be surprised if the Clips get there, but that'll be a fun semifinal with them and Roman Catholic. That's if Chester and Roman match up in that game, that's going to be an interesting one to watch. This Roman team is as good as last year. They're just not the same type of good as last year, if that makes any sense. They're kind of doing things a little bit differently than what they were a year ago, but they haven't been tested, and they won't be tested, and they'll get tested this week with Whitehall, but they should get through these next 2 games and get to the state semis again.
Quick step aside, we come back and we'll break down the big ones. Laurel against Fort Cherry for the WPIL semifinal, trip to the finals on the line, and the District 10 title game with Wilmington taking on Greenville. We'll break those down when we return here in a moment. Stay tuned on Beyond the Scoreboard on the LC SportsNet, powered by LCAP. Congratulations to the October LCAP Team of the Month. The Lawrence County SportsNet is proud to honor Mohawk Girls Volleyball as October's LCAP Team of the Month for winning their first section title in program history and their first playoff victory in program history as well. Congratulations to Coach Anna Fadden and the Mohawk Warrior Volleyball Team, your LCAP Team of the Month. Lawrence County SportsNet is proud to honor your Red Zone October Male Athlete of the Month as Zayden Herb of Neshannock for scoring his 100th career goal and scoring 6 goals in a playoff victory, the first playoff victory in 14 years for Neshannock. Lawrence County SportsNet also proud to honor the Red Zone Female Athlete of the Month, Lindsay Hoover of Wilmington Golf, for finishing 12th in the PIAA Championships. Congratulations to Wilmington's Lindsay Hoover and Neshannock's Zayden Herb, your Red Zone Athletes of the Month. Calling all sports fans. Never miss a moment with real-time alerts, keeping you in the loop when your favorite teams are playing.
Get instant updates sent straight to your phone with game schedules, changes, and all the latest news.
You can receive important updates and reminders, so you're always prepared for game time.
Be the first to cheer on your local teams and show your support.
Receive important updates and reminders, so you're always prepared for the game.
Signing up is quick and easy. Don't miss out. Sign up now and stay connected to the action.
Plus, follow us on social media for live updates, behind-the-scenes content, and community news. Make sure that sign-up continues as we get into the winter sports months. Already got a couple of hockey broadcasts under our belt. We'll get a couple of more of those here before we go on to the holiday break. We'll get into basketball season coming up. Bocce matches will be going on shortly as well. We'll have you all covered going into the winter months. Stay warm out there, folks. It's gonna be fun. There's gonna be a lot of changes. Always end up having cancellations, delays. We're gonna have fun differences in the schedule. Let's talk about that real quick, Eric, while we have a moment here. Things different with Newcastle basketball. You're going to have some Monday, Thursday boys games for the Canes this year. So you're going to have a chance, maybe if you're a fan of, the Scotties or the Wildcats or the Lancers or whatever, and you don't get a chance to see a lot of the other teams around the area, you can all go and watch Newcastle games on opposite nights now. The boys are playing Monday, Thursday at home, and the girls are playing Tuesdays, Fridays at home this year.
Yeah, I think that's a good move by them. And was that done? I mean, how did they have to work that with the WPIL? Is that a school thing, or was it just?
So the way that the DoCal schedules are put out there, Eric, is actually with a 2-day window to get your section games in. It's just always kind of been a tradition, so to speak, that the boys' games are always been on Tuesday, Friday, with the girls' games on Monday, Thursday. But there's nothing that says you couldn't have, hey, both games on Monday, both games on Tuesday. You set your home schedule how you set your home schedule. Now, the road games will still be likely mainly games on Tuesdays, Fridays, that sort of thing. But yeah, they've always been on those 2-day schedules. Like, for example, a couple of years ago, that Hillel Academy that Union played in the first round of the basketball playoffs, they requested that their playoff game that was scheduled for Friday to be moved to Thursday to get it off of the Jewish holiday, the Jewish Sabbath day on Friday. So it made perfect sense. And for a playoff game, you had to get permission to be able to do that. For an away game, you have to get permission to do that. I know there was one team in their section that year that basically refused to move their game from Friday. And I think that's because they were also sharing a gymnasium space and they couldn't rent out other times to do it. And Hillel said, oh, okay, we can't play on a different night. We're just going to forfeit that Friday night game. So it's all about being able to, work these compromises. But when it comes to your home game, you can schedule it as long as it's in that 2-day window of your section. You can schedule it in that 2 days span. So, I think creative scheduling, it's going to work out well. Honestly, I think probably for attendance too. You're going to get some other casual fans coming to the games, as hopefully as long as the typical fans that you see every Tuesday and Friday night for Newcastle, as long as they remember that the game is no longer on Tuesday night but on Monday night. That might be the biggest hurdle they have to go through at the early part of the season.
Yeah, I kind of like that. And it's going to open up the possibility to get more exposure for the team, more people, more eyes on them. Boys are certainly going to be a favorite in 6A this year, too. I don't think they might be the favorite in 6A, come to think of it, with all that talent coming back. And then you add Marino Graham in there. And now that we're in basketball season, from a Hurricanes perspective, if you haven't seen the video of Marino Graham as a youngster on YouTube, go search that out, because if that's any indication of how good he's going to be on the basketball floor as a high school player, then there's some good things coming for Newcastle here. Him and Cox getting 3 years together is going to be something special.
Most of that starting five coming from the football field. We'll need to get into basketball shape, as they will across the county. Couple teams though still not ready to get in basketball shape yet. Let's take a look here, Eric. Let's talk first about the Class 1A WPIAL semifinals games here, with the top 4 teams all making it: Fort Cherry against Laurel and Clairton against Bishop Canavan. Let's talk briefly about that 2-3 matchup, Clairton and Canavan, because this time last week I said it's Clairton all the way to the finals, probably taking the whole thing. Chink in the armor showed off by Jeanette putting 33 points on the board, and Canavan, it was against Fraser, but they put up 50 now in each of their 2 playoff games. Greensburg Central Catholic and now Fraser, the recipients of the half-century mark. So where do you see this one going? Canavan can put up points. Clairton all of a sudden can give up points.
Yeah, maybe there was enough exposed there that Canavan, gets this thing into the fourth. I know that people anointed this is the Clairton, who was going to be the favorite, Clairton or Fort Cherry, and rightfully so this year. I saw this Clairton team, 2 years ago, and I can tell you right now that I thought they were going to be as good as they were. I even wrote about it in a story for the Trib about how they're kind of showing signs of what they used to be. The defense is fantastic, but if anything was shown to us in last week's matchup, Jeanette put on film how you can score with them. Canavan won't be shy about taking chances. Canavan, and if you ask me, the story of the game is, can Clairton slow down Canavan? I don't care who they've played, but that's 100 points in 2 playoff games, and that's super impressive. It might be the most impressive stat in this 1A bracket so far. So I think the question then becomes, what does Clairton do to slow down Canavan? We'll see. I'd be a little concerned if I was a Bear, just because what was put on film last week by Jeanette. Close game. I'm still going to go Clairton, I think, to get through that and get to the final, though. I think they'll make enough plays on defense.
Yeah, quick shout out to DeMar Olds. He's the one who moved from wide out to quarterback with the ineligibility of Brady Wagner in the playoffs. All he's done is run for 5 touchdowns and throw for 3 more. Having never played quarterback before. Not bad.
Yeah, you work him in practice knowing that he's going to be your guy. You give him enough reps in practice, he can step right in.
That game on Friday night, as is the 1-4 game between Fort Cherry and Laurel. Let's get the history out of the way because, Eric, these two teams have played once before in the playoffs back in the 80s, 1986 to be exact. That was a Laurel 23-0 victory over Fort Cherry. Some big names in history in that game, especially on the Fort Cherry side, a 4,000-yard rusher in Tokar there back in the 80s. You're going to see, I think, a similar scenario. Both teams love to run the football first and foremost. Laurel with a little bit more diversity, especially this year with the arm injury to Sig. This game is going to be it's not going to be won or lost in the first 5 minutes, but I think that you could easily have a huge swing in momentum if one of the teams comes out flat. Like, honestly, both of them did last week. A lot of penalties early for a lot of the teams across the area, but both the Rangers and the Spartans really had to fight penalties early on in the game. If you see one of those teams being able to shake off any penalties or avoid those penalties when the other team can't in those first couple of drives, Eric, you're going to get some momentum right off the bat and making the other team have to play from behind.
Yeah, and, James, the other thing about this game, too, is that, again, I go back to the point that Fort Cherry has to win this. Like, they feel like they have to win this. And if that's has any ill effect on them and putting too much pressure on themselves, maybe they get caught. Maybe Laurel can exploit something. I went and I asked Andrew Irby, who's the head coach at Steel High. He's been one of my friends for 20, 25 years now. In fact, we were even college classmates over the summer one year. And I went back and I said to him, he was an excellent running back when he played at Steel High, linebacker too, just a hard-nosed, has such a good mind for football. And then his two sons obviously were on the state title team that beat Fort Cherry a couple of years ago. So he's one of two coaches the last 3 years that's beaten his Fort Cherry team. Then you look at Port Allegheny and having Aiden Bliss last year. Well, I asked Herb, I said, what do you have to do to beat this Fort Cherry team? And he flat out told me, he said, when we were looking at the tape on them, we didn't focus too much on Matt Sig. Like, we knew what he was. And he phrased it in a way where he didn't mean this disrespectfully, but he's basically a running back who can throw the ball once in a while. And I thought to myself, that's a really interesting way to look at this. Like, you're not scheming for the quarterback. He's not going to play quarterback. He doesn't even wear like a wrist, like a play sheet on his wrist. He puts two gloves on like he's a skill player, and they run him. And he could throw the ball a lot better that year when he was healthy, and they haven't asked him to do a whole lot of that this year. So Herb goes on to tell me that he said, we focused on their blocking schemes and tried to figure out what we needed to do to control the line of scrimmage. Well, the last team that beat Fort Cherry did the exact same thing because Aiden Bliss ran for 303 yards in that game last year. So obviously the MO and the way you beat them, and Clareton did it last year too in the WPIL final. Sig just had to pull one of the most ridiculous plays ever out of his hat to beat them in that final. Like, that is one of the greatest plays ever. So it begs the question then, can Laurel do this? And the answer is yes, they can. And people should not be shocked if the full scope of this team, should not be shocked if Laurel keeps this thing close, because they've got the offensive line, they've got the 4-year quarterback, they've got the 4-year running back in Carlson, they've got weapons all over the place that they can tap into when they need to. Maybe Carlson gets 10 straight carries, then maybe it's Nathan Hill, then maybe it's JJ McBride, then maybe it's Braden Faulkner, then maybe it's Jack Miles. And defensively, they have weapons all over the place. They get 20 interceptions. They're not going to have to worry about that so much this week. But it's the pressure. It's getting in the backfield. It's disrupting the running lanes. It's the space they eat up. They're going to have the size advantage. Yeah, I might be trying to sell everybody who's listening to this on a potential upset, and I'm not trying to do that. I'm just giving you facts about the Laurel team so you understand this is not going to be 58-0. And, this is going to be, I think, a much closer game than people think. And it's going to be because of the ability to, at times, control the line of scrimmage. Fort Cherry is still the favorite to do this thing, and they are until somebody beats them. But this Laurel team has the makeup of some of these teams in the past that have done the damage. Probably a little more of a Steel High type makeup, not so much in terms of the athlete. And obviously, Alex Irby was the #1 passer in the state till last year, all time. But in terms of offensive line and how they tap into their firepower like that Steel High team did, with all those weapons that they had. And Laurel's got more depth than that Steel High team did too, because that Steel High roster had 27 kids on it. And they were so depleted on depth that they still had to play their starters when they were blowing, when that was a mercy rule in that state final. Laurel's got a lot more depth on their team than that team did that pounded them last year. They have a lot more depth on their team than Port Allegheny, who pounded Fort Cherry last year too. I don't think if Laurel wins, it can be a blowout, but I for sure there exists a universe in which the Spartans actually do this and get to a WPIAL final, and the blueprint's not as tough to figure out as you think it is.
Last time that Laurel made it to a final was 1989, and who did they play in the final was Clairton. So that's all kind of coming full circle as a possible scenario yet again there.
Aren't teams just due sometimes? Aren't teams just like sometimes
Yeah.
due to get there? And, you know, again, Fort Cherry's been there, done that. I get it. But sometimes it's just the other team's time. And and maybe it happens Friday night, maybe chalk holds. I don't know. But I think there's going to be a lot of people whose eyes open up and go, man, that was a close game. Yeah, it should be if you know both teams.
Couple things to talk about schematically wise. For Laurel, what they've been so successful on behind that offensive line, they can use the same personnel, spread you out 3 or 4 wide, and have to spread a defense out, and then they can run or throw out of it. Or they'll go into a power T formation where they'll run it big time with multiple lead blockers. I mean, you got Miles and Hill leading the way for Carlson or vice versa. But then they also can go play action out of that and get some wide open looks. So I love the versatility that they show in that regard, spread it out versus getting, this power T. It was it's a formation that you saw Rochester really be successful with in the last couple of years of the Gene Matsook era. On Fort Cherry's side, you saw a lot last week where there were times Matt Sig did not line up a quarterback. He was lined up in the slot or a couple times at the running back, mainly in the slot when he wasn't at QB. Ryan Huey throws a decent ball as well. He's only thrown 3 balls on the season, but he definitely shows, a threat to be able to throw the football as well. But to tell you in the end, Fort Cherry is run heavy when Wilmington has attempted more passes on the year than Fort Cherry has. That should tell you enough about how much the Rangers like running the football. And they do some special things with their line, Eric, that you noticed in moving some personnel around.
Yeah, and to your point about the Laurel offense, I mean, they're sort of like an amoeba. Like they can do so many different things to beat you. And, whether it's run the football, I mean, again, 2 guys that can carry the football. I mean, Colton Carlson's got, just ungodly numbers. He's averaging 12 yards a touch on offense over his career. Nathan Hill's been fantastic this year. Remember, we said early in the year about how they were trying to ease him back into the flow of things. And then all of a sudden, like 3 games later, he's carrying the ball 25 times in a game or 20 times in a game. I just think that they have the ability to adapt to anything. They can simplify it. They can take chances. You have to be willing to take chances against this team. And I said this last week too. You just have to know who you're playing. Like, okay, it's Fort Cherry. They're in front of you. That's it. You can't. If they mentally get you before the game, you're done. If you're fighting the mystique and the legend of this kid, and I mean, he is a great one. I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
I said to you earlier today, I think his ceiling is like Cooper DeJean level at college, and that's a pretty damn high ceiling. So he's got potential to be that way, but they have so many ways that they can attack you, and I really think that they're going to open some eyes. They may not win the game, but they're going to open some eyes in this one on Friday.
Kind of gives me flashbacks to the great Clairton teams from just about a decade ago. That Clairton Shannon game that ended up going into overtime is kind of the feel I get going into this one. No one was talking about Neshannock that year, and they took a kid by the name of Wade all the way to the brink before Clairton was able to pull it out. I think we're going to get a dandy of a game on Friday night. Again, you can watch it with our commentary on the NFHS network and listen for free at lcsportsnet.com. On Saturday, Eric, we will also have video coverage. This one, free video coverage with Sports Radio 96.7. Check it out on their Facebook page. We'll have the video coverage of the District 10 title game between Wilmington and Greenville. They played last year in a championship. They played in the first week of the year this season. You know what to expect when these 2 teams go at it. It's going to be another hard-nosed game. The difference from last year to this year, I think Greenville was the team that improved more over the course of last season. They were a better team at the end of the year than they were at the beginning of the year. Wilmington, I think, is that story this year. They've progressively gotten better over the course of this season. I think they're the one playing a little bit better football here as we get to the final stages of the season.
Yeah, and they sort of feel like that they themselves need to have a crowning achievement too. I know they're district champs last year, but they feel like they left some things on the table and they have some unfinished business to tend to. Maybe Port Allegheny in the next round too. You can't get caught looking ahead for sure. They won't. Brendan Fillion will have them ready to go, and their running attack is as good as it's been all year long. They'll pound Mitchell Tree. Man, Mitchell Tree, he looks faster and more agile this year than what he did last year. And when we did the game against Reynolds last year, they didn't need him to do a whole lot in that game. That was more of a Freddie Z game against Reynolds in that one. But so many ways to beat you. And I kind of like how they took some chances throwing the football last week too. And man, I'll tell you too, the other thing that Coach Fillion does really well, he rotates those quarterbacks in really well too. What's coming when each guy gets out there, but he does such a good job of managing those two and tapping into what they each do. And they're a well-oiled machine. This team's on, I don't want to say cruise control, but they're cruising to another District 10 title. There's no question about that.
They probably played the worst game of their year last year against Greenville in the title game. So 3 or 4 turnovers, and still were able to get the victory in that one. 26-21 was the final in that game at Hickory. They're back at Hickory again for the game this year. Just to talk about the Trojans here real quick, because they, like Wilmington, have almost everybody back from the team that they had a year ago. Rudy Gentile's 1,000-yard rusher. He's a big part of their offense, but they throw it pretty effectively with Cale Thurber. He's got 22 touchdowns, most of them going to Justin Shell. Shell was part of the hook and forward lateral that went for an 80-yard touchdown in the championship game a year ago. They have plenty of weapons that this Hounds Hammer defense is going to have to deal with.
Yeah, I was actually going to bring up the point about them throwing the football. I think that's going to be an X factor in this game. Whether, it looks good on Friday, it might not be great Saturday, so we'll have to keep an eye on that because we're expecting some rain, I think, through the region on Saturday now, but we'll see how that plays out. But if they can get the conditions right to throw the football, their mix, I think, is what's going to decide the game.
That's again on Saturday night with the Professor Ryan Briggs and Chris Birch on the call on 96.7, and we'll be helping provide the video coverage for that one on Championship Saturday in District 10. Before we wrap up this episode of Beyond the Scoreboard, I do want to give a shout out. It was National Signing Day today. Big shout out to everybody who signed their letters of intent here today. And I know I'm going to miss a bunch, but there were some softballers who I know were signing today. Union's Liv Williams and Chloe Confer, I know, signed today. Reagan Magno of Mohawk signed today, as did McKenna Stewart. and McCliston of Elwood City signed her national letter of intent as well. Big shout out to all the other ones who I know I apologize I'm missing. I know a lot of baseball players who have already made their commitments, Lucas Santini being one of them, playing at the next level. Aaron Lake going to Pitt at the next level. Big shout out to everybody who has already signed or is going to be signing. Please tag us in those commitment videos, your signings, your Instagram and Twitter posts. We want to make sure that you guys are all spotlighted. Congratulations to everybody going to play at the next level. Congratulations to all who have played this football season and this fall sports season as a whole in all the sports. A couple more weeks left to go till we crown a state champion, believe it or not. Yep, just 4 weeks away from that. Will any of our teams still be playing over the Turkey weekend? Will be the final order of business to find out. But first, a chance at District 10 Gold for Wilmington on Saturday, a chance for the Spartans to play for District Gold if they're to get the big upset win on Friday night. Real quick, Eric, one final, just the big key for both Laurel and Wilmington to win their respective games coming up this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, Laurel, it's obvious. It's control the line of scrimmage and make sure that you are staying ahead of the sticks. No penalties, but the big ones control the line of scrimmage against Fort Cherry. They do that, they're going to be in this game. It's going to be a 4-quarter fight. We'll see if they can hang on there. Many teams have played pretty well if you watch some games against Fort Cherry. They just haven't done it for the long stretches. And I think this Laurel team is mentally tough to keep it close in that one. And for Wilmington, I think it's get everybody a touch. I wouldn't mind seeing him throw the ball a little bit more too. Like Freddie Zehetner had some good matchups last week in some one-on-one coverage, and Wesley Vascal really put a couple of nice passes out there for him to try to go get. I think that their ability to kind of adapt, like they run this wing T, and basically, James, it's like a spread because they have so many guys that can beat you. It's like a spread wing T, which is sort of fun to watch. But man, they line up and get after you. It's going to be pick your poison with that Wilmington team, whether it's Freddie, whether it's Mitchell Tree, whether it's Vascal, whoever, Rowan Miller. You're going to see these guys kind of explode. I think they want to win that crown bad.
Going to be a fun couple of days over the weekend and hopefully continuing on for us here at lcsportsnet.com. Big thanks, Eric Thomas, joining us. Thanks for tuning in. However you get your podcast, big shout out to the entire crew. They've done such great work for us throughout the course of this broadcast season. Still going strong here into the month of November, and we'll continue, as always, into the winter months as well. So stay tuned. We'll be getting basketball previews coming up here shortly. Can't believe we're just a couple of weeks away from opening tip-off of those tip-off tournaments. Yeah, we're going to be doing basketball before the end of November, as crazy as that sounds. Of course, hockey coverage coming up more here as well at lcsportsnet.com. Thanks again, Eric Thomas. I'm James Dotson, and thank you for tuning in for the preview show for Final Four Friday and semifinal Saturday.